And welcome everyone to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always. And if you are planning a PCS this summer, more specifically a PPM, you are not going to want to miss today's episode. So stick around for all of the information that we're going to talk about. Before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody that as you are getting your orders and setting up your move in DPS, even if you're doing a PPM, you still have to set it up in DPS. You still have to tell the military how you're moving. Just keep in mind that you're not going to get your TSPs and your shipments and your companies assigned and booked until next month. It happens every year that the industry goes through a rate filing process, and theirs is wrapping up. Those rates have to be approved, put into DPS, the whole rigmarole of everything. But looking about mid to late April, you should start seeing those emails come into your inbox with your TSPs assigned. If you start getting concerned that it's near the end of April and you haven't received an email yet, reach out to your local transportation office, follow up with them as to what's going on to make sure that all of your information for your move is in the system and they've got everything that they need. So like I said, we're going to dive into today because we've got a lot of information I want to make sure we have time to talk about because it's stuff that everybody needs to know, especially if you're doing a PPM. Even if you're thinking about doing a PPM, you're not quite sure, you want to tune in, go ahead, get your notebook, grab your coffee, grab a pen, stick around for this. So joining me today are two of, I'm just going to go ahead and call you guys my friends in the industry, Brittany and Lakelan, are going to join us today and tell us about what we need to know in regards to PPM. So I'm going to start with you, Lakelan. Can you just take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, wow. A little bit about myself. Since we're friends, y'all know that I talk too much. So this is an hour, right? So I need to make this part quick. I'm Lakelan Fennell. I'm with Sudeth Government Services. My career in this industry spans about 30 years. I started literally in the warehouse unloading trucks and worked my way through. I've done office moves, local moves, driven a truck, the whole thing. Worked my way through to start doing military pre-move surveys and base interactions at Fort Jackson. And eventually got to the point to where I was the general manager of a multi-location van line agent in Nilsson Van Storage. Was a GM of multiple locations. Worked my way up and through claims and sales, and ended my career there as the vice president of market development. So that was all DPM contracts, non-temp stores, comp agreements. I also ran the sales department and logistics department and office moves and all that. But I joined the Sudeth team a little over a year ago in network development. So my responsibility was making sure that we have quality capacity and very good service providers to move the military service members on the domestic side. That was really exciting to me because I love the interaction with the service members, with the installations, with the bases, and with the agents to make sure that those boots on the ground movers are the best that we can provide, best we can lay out there to provide that service. I've just recently have been promoted to the senior director of GSA at Sudeth. So now I get to go on to the non-DOD government side, which is interesting. But yeah, so I'm on multiple committees of IAM, International Association of Movers, and ATA MSC Moving and Storage Conference. And I'm the vice chair of the Domestic Asset-Based Mover Group of IM, which we'll talk about that a little bit today too. So with that, that's me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And then Brittany, can you just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Yeah, since Lakelan took, 35 minutes of our hour, I will go brief. So my name is Brittany Brooks. I am with the Concert Group. We are located here in Jacksonville, Florida. My background started out of college, more on the office side instead of on the boots on the ground side. So I was with a transportation service provider on the TMM side, doing international business for the last 12 years. I have recently transitioned to vice president of Concert Group. We've been doing this for a long time now. So my kind of background is more in everything. So if it's claims, if it's equipment, if it's commercial projects, FF&E, O&I. My background is customer service, though. So I think it doesn't matter what business line we're doing. We are all here to serve our customers. And that's really where my passion comes from. I am on the Domestic Asset-Based Management Board with Lakelan as well. I have the privilege of working with him there, which we'll talk about today, too. And then besides that, I do a lot of charity work. So that's really me.
No, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you both for giving your time to be here today as we talk about PPM. So let's just dive right in because we got a lot to discuss today. So let's start from the beginning. So a family that decides that they want to do a PPM, where should they be looking to find a company to do their PPM?
All right, who wants to take this first?
Ladies
Okay.
first? Okay, I'll go first. I'll
Go
start.
ahead.
I appreciate it, Megan. I mean, Lakelan and I are both so passionate about DoD too. We really want service members to feel confident. There's so much change coming, and we just think it's so important that they start on the right foot. One of the best places that they can really start with is the International Association of Movers. There is something that's called a trusted mover identification. And in addition, the American Trucking Association also has what's called a pro mover designation. So I do recommend, first and foremost, sharing that amongst the military community. There is extensive requirements to be designated in this level. So it's not just someone who can pay to be advertised. You have to meet rigorous requirements to be able to be there. It's length of business service, financial standards, insurance standards, drug test and background check requirements, privacy policy requirements. I could talk a lot about those things, but the point I think is identifying these known and trusted companies or organizations that are really pushing their members to kind of be that next step. So I'm going to start with those two, and then Lake, I'll let you piggyback.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a few ways to go about this to find the best company to provide you service. So in my opinion, if you can walk into the front door of a location and meet the people that are working there in the ops and the sales and those people, a physical location, we call them brick and mortar, right? So it's a warehouse or a location you can walk into. You're not, now you can Google search, you can go on the internet. There's nothing wrong with finding a mover that way, but you want to make sure that you can actually physically see and talk to the individuals that you're hiring to move, because that's a different level of investment in the industry and in quality service. So there's a thing called Mobility Exchange, which the International Association of Movers has, and we can put that in the chat. But the Mobility Exchange allows you to go in, and it says you can search by name or category, and you put DAB, and it'll come up with domestic asset-based movers. And there's actually a map of the entire country, and it shows every domestic asset-based mover that's a part of IM. And those are all companies that are a part of IM, which has an ethics code and requires all their members to follow, both in interactions with other members and with interactions with the public. So there's a lot of good movers in that, and it's all over the country. So there's movers everywhere that are like that, right? So you can go with the van line agents, which is always good. So United, Mayflower, Atlas, these companies, you can go with those, which they also have their own set of requirements to be agents. So you don't have to worry about fly-by-night situations with that. There's also a lot of good independent movers that aren't van line affiliated. There's Firefighting's Finest out of Dallas. There's Cornerstone Moving and Storage in Virginia. There's some really good companies that are like that. So how do you know which one of those people is the right one? Well, places like ATA MSC, places like the International Association of Movers, the DAB movers, those are places you can go and feel comfortable that those companies are going to give you the best service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned in there the whole, Googling things. You talked about having a brick and mortar store. I will say Google Maps with the street view is amazing, because there's been many times where you can go the street view if they say like, this is, our business is located here, and you spin around and there's no sign and it looks like an empty lot or an abandoned warehouse or whatever, and it just makes it come a little bit more questionable as to like, is this really what you
or
say you are?
It's in an apartment complex or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to get dropped into the comments for everybody. Our Google Drive of free resources for everyone. We have a PPM planning worksheet in there where it gives you space where you can go and get your quotes, request information, write notes, figure out your budget and all of that. So that way everybody watching, if you're planning your PPM, can kind of help you with some of that. We'll get the the link for the mobility exchange and all of that, we'll get that dropped into the comments as well for everyone. And at some point on the show, we're going to have Chuck and Ray to talk more about the IAM Trusted Mover program, because I'm really excited about that. Probably a thorn in their side about getting the customer facing side done, because I think that's just going to be so beneficial to our community. And if you guys are watching, you got questions about any stuff PPM, please drop them in the comments. We'll be happy to ask Lakelan and Brittany and get some expert advice on what it is you guys need to know. Moving on to our next question. So say I found a company and it feels pretty legit and I want to go with them. What are some questions that I should be asking to ensure that they can actually handle my move and to know that they are a reputable company?
Great question. All right, Lakelan, you're up first.
So some of the questions you want to ask to find out if they're a reputable company is what state associations are you a part of? Are you because most states are regulated in one form or another, and so the state utilities commission, usually, I know South Carolina has the South Carolina utility, has the public service commission that regulates movers through the Office of Regulatory Staff. North Carolina and Georgia have the public service commissions. Actually, that's the utilities commission that regulate movers. So you need to make sure, because some states require it. I know South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, you can't be a mover in those states without being licensed and approved by the state. So find out if they are an approved mover by the state that they're in. That's a big thing. Number two, do they have a physical location, a warehouse? That's usually a pretty big deal. So always check on that. Find out if they currently do military business. Most companies that do military business also do other lines too. So they do commercial moves as well, or what we call COD moves. So they'll be able to handle PPM moves, but they're used to the military way of doing business, the regulations, the requirements, and all that. So that helps that transition be pretty easy. So you're going to get the best possible quality of move. And I will tell you, this is kind of interesting. I was actually on a Facebook group talking with somebody last night. What's the difference in getting moved inside a DP3? In other words, the government doing it PCS or doing a PPM. Is it easier to move a military member outside of DP3? And in my opinion, it kind of is, because DP3 has a very, as Megan knows, and so does Brittany, a large set of rules and regulations, and there you spend so much time trying to adhere to all of these rules and regulations. How much time can you actually dedicate just to the customer service that may or may not get a little bit outside of what the requirements allow, but it's better for the customer. So on the PPM side, you really have the advantage of both worlds. So you've got the people that have that military moving mindset, but you also have the freedom of a commercial shipment, which allows some more things to happen that are dedicated to quality without having to adhere to so many of the DP3 rules that apply.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of Lake a little bit too. I think, he made great points too. One of the things I think to ask as well is during this process with picking a mover, I think it's so important to have a rapport and a relationship with someone you're going to hire. I mean, you're going to trust them. They're going to drive away, same as if it was DP3, but you need to have that relationship. I would challenge any service member or spouse when they're looking for a mover to ask, are you going to come to my home and do an in-home survey, or do I have to be virtual with someone who's out of state? Can I come to your warehouse? Can I come and see where the facility is? Maybe you're going to have storage there. Can I come check you out and shake your hand and drive around and see where my stuff is going? To that point too, you can even ask, what's your background check? What's your drug testing standards? Are you a drug-free work environment? Do you have that designation? Step further, what's your insurance coverage? Do you offer additional insurance coverage? What am I paying for? What are you giving me? Understanding what a PPM is, movers are going to want to try and help service members. We understand the cost implications you guys face, and one of them is the cost of materials. A mover who wants to work and partner with you as a customer Can I give you used materials? Can I alleviate some of this cost for you so you can pack on your own, but you don't have to buy all of these things? Again, like Lakelan said, with the experienced mover who's already doing DOD, maybe it's State Department, maybe it's the military under DP3, we understand what kind of materials and standards are needed. And that's what you're going to look for just more on your own schedule and with your control aspects. So being able to meet and really give you that sense of comfort before you hire someone of, hey, I understand. I know the paperwork that's required behind a PPM. I mean, you guys need the empty weight ticket, the heavy weight ticket, and just having that ahead of time, proactively telling the customer or the spouse or the service member, I understand what you need. It's all included, ready to go, and it's a bound move. That kind of conversation, I think, is going to help.
Yeah, and definitely about the weight tickets, because we see several times in our groups too where people are just like, I thought they would just provide these. I didn't know I had to request them, and now our stuff is delivered. Like, what do I do to be able to get reimbursed for their move? So especially having a company that knows that when you say, hey, we're military and we're doing a move, it knows the requirements and knows what is needed, I think goes a long way. We got Georgia in the comments. Thank you, Georgia, for dropping the link for the IAM's link there that everyone can go. We've got a question here from Caroline jumped in. I'm going to toss it up here. That she is just going to, let's see, let's show. My computer might be running slow today. Yeah, here we go. Up on the screen, wanting to know, we're going to break this down into a couple of parts, Carolyn. So PPM, something else besides renting a truck and a trailer, how do you get started? Is it through your transportation office? So the first thing is that you need your orders. And once you get your orders, you do have to set up on DPS or through your transportation office that you want to do a PPM. But there are multiple ways of doing a PPM, right? We've been talking about doing a full service move where you hire a company that can come in and do all that. And you were touching on some of it there, Brittany, about how, saving the customer a little bit of money if I wanted to pack myself. Can you guys just talk a little bit about what some of those different options in doing a PPM is? It doesn't necessarily have to be a full service company, but it doesn't also have to be a, let's go rent the Penske truck and make my husband drive across country again and really test our marriage of hard life decisions.
Yeah, Lakelan, you want to go ahead on that one first?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to look at this. So one way is, yes, you can rent a truck, rent a trailer, that kind of stuff, and move yourself. So there's a couple of aspects to that. So yes, it might be a little bit less expensive, but there's a couple of things to look at. What is your time worth? How much do you get paid? And how much does it cost you to do that move if you're doing it yourself? So if you're doing 8 hours a day for, let's just say, pack day, load day, driving for 3 days, delivering all day. So you're talking 6-7 days of your life. What does that cost you financially? So you add that into the cost of it. So on the other side of that, if you hire a mover, then that you get to do all the other stuff that you need to take care of and not have to, spend all that time. At the same time, what happens if you get injured when you're moving that furniture? Because furniture can be heavy. So what happens if you get injured? Is that something that you can actually miss work for? Can you miss, you're checking at your new duty station because you pulled a muscle or something like that? I mean, things like that happen during moves. I'm a big proponent of, if somebody else, and I'm in the moving business, I'm about to move for the 24th time in my life. So I've moved a lot of times. I've done it myself. I've loaded, delivered, packed everything. I've also had other people do it. I always encourage having other people do it. That's always so much better in the end. So that's how I look at it. There is a way to do it with the rental option, but if you can get a full service move, I highly recommend going that route.
There's a good meme out there that we're going to share. It's notorious in our military community. We'll ask a couple buddies to come help us. We'll get some beer and some pizza. There's a good meme out there saying if you're over 35, hire some movers because nobody wants a slip disc for some pizza and beer.
So yeah, true.
Hire people.
I'll just piggyback with Lakelan too. He made such a great point. But I do also think there are there are families or service members who are very familiar with PPMs, and they want to do maybe a partial with their own vehicle and their sentimentals or some antiques or just things that they feel more comfortable having in their car, and then hiring a mover maybe for the rest of it, or the transporting the second vehicle or whatever. That way mom and dad and the kids can be in the car and they can move that section or do the pets and let some other people come in. And so I think, again, part of this process is the educational piece and making sure whoever you hire, whether it's for a full service, which will alleviate a lot of that stress, or even just for part of it, making sure that they're knowledgeable in this topic and they can work with you and they can make sure you know the paperwork that you're going to need, or they can supply their piece of the puzzle for you and understanding the time frames and 45 days after delivery, you got to get your paperwork turned in, and just making sure that they're going to be that tool, that extra tool in your toolbox instead of maybe being a challenge piece. So I know that that's pretty common here. A lot of people do, partials themselves and then let the big stuff go with a mover kind of thing. And so I think just finding that value add.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Brittany said. You made a very good point, because if there's something that you have that is absolutely irreplaceable, because things happen. I mean, you've seen the pictures of the container ships that got hit in a storm and 40 containers go over the side. Trucks catch on fire. Bad things happen. So if there's things, a urn with your grandmother's ashes in it, or some of these things that are just absolutely irreplaceable, absolutely take those either in your vehicle or even rent a small truck and take those things that you just absolutely cannot have anything happen to. Not that it happens often, it's a pretty rare thing, but it does happen. So that's why I've always encouraged people, if there's anything it's complete family heirloom, sentimental, things like that, to take that yourself, because that way you can virtually guarantee that you'll get that there safely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Doing a partial PPM is always worth it. So if you are moving anything in your vehicle, your suitcase, your luggage, the pro gear for your spouse, because they're going directly into the field or on rotation or deployment or something, definitely set up to have a PPM, partial PPM done as well. Weigh your vehicles and you can get paid for that weight. It's definitely always worth it. They do combine your partial PPM weight with your weight from the moving company. So if for some reason like you go over, you just don't get paid for it, but at least you don't have to pay overage fees. But if you're under it, then you do get paid for it. It's a little bit of a way to have a little bit extra money to pay for those extra hotel days that don't get reimbursed, and pet expenses and other things that come out of pocket. So now that we're choosing our company, what are some red flags that we should be looking for that, if we see them, we should be like, this is not a real company, someplace we should probably stay away from?
Brittany, you want that one?
Oh gosh, yes. So I'm going to get all red because it makes me so frustrated with these movers. We said it a little bit earlier, not having a brick and mortar, not having a location, being some paper company online that's not established anywhere, a phone number that doesn't associate with the city, kind of where they're advertising from. Maybe they're asking for a very large deposit up front, and you've only barely signed anything, and the move is in 3 weeks, and they want half of the money immediately. Some of these transactions and these conversations, if they're internet only, you can't get someone on the phone, and you're doing just all of these virtual quotes, a virtual inventory sheet, and it all looks great and all looks dandy, and they have a really cute photo or video that plays at the end, and a DocuSign pops up that you've signed for. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go that way. That's my first ones. We're going to kind of, I'm sure we'll stick on this one here for a topic, but go ahead, Lake.
Yeah. So I agree with Brittany. The first thing is if they're asking you to pay for that entire move well in advance, that's a red flag. A lot of van lines and a lot of companies will, let's say you're paying by credit card, they'll basically pre-authorize your card 48 hours prior to loading. That's normal. But if somebody's saying, like she said, 3 weeks or a month before, we need the entire move done, and paid for, that's a red flag. Get a binding estimate. I would almost say don't ever do a non-binding.
Can you really quick tell us the difference between binding and non-binding and what those mean for people watching?
Okay, so a non-binding estimate means they guess how many boxes they're going to need, what the weight is, all the different aspects to that move, and they price it based on that. Then they actually charge you in the end for how many boxes they packed, how much weight they moved, all the other things, and it can be vastly different depending on a lot of factors. So not the least of which is how good they are at doing the estimate to begin with. So there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to that. So a binding estimate is you show them everything in your house that you're moving, and they create an estimate and go, it's actually an order for service. So it's no longer an estimate. It's actually a binding contract for this is how much we're going to charge you to move this amount of stuff. Now, it's a little bit different than on DP3 shipments, because DP3 shipments, sorry, that's what happens when you don't move.
Go party.
So in a DP3 shipment, they're all non-binding because sometimes members will sell furniture, or sometimes they'll buy furniture before they move. So that's one thing. But in a binding estimate, they actually do a table of measurements, and they have a list of everything in that survey. And so if you add a bunch of stuff on before you move, they probably will not move that, or they'll have to redo the estimate to add in the items that you've added. So that's a binding estimate. And a binding estimate really does safeguard you against the ginormous charges at the other side. Which brings me to another point. If you're getting multiple, which we absolutely encourage, at least 3 estimates, that's always the best thing. I've seen people get 7 or 8 estimates. I think that's probably overkill, but at least 3 estimates. And if you see 2 of those estimates that are this dollar amount, and then a third estimate that is 40% less than the other ones, that's a red flag. More often than not, in my experience, when people get caught by road movers at the end, it's because they go, well, I got 2 estimates for $7,500, one for $7,300, and these people said they could do it for $3,600. So of course I went with them. Well, there's something wrong with that, right? It's the same thing. If you're going to buy cars and you go to 3 different car dealers, everybody's basically asking the same, and this other one's got a car that's half of what the rest of them are, you probably should look under the hood, because there may not be an engine in it, right? So it's that kind of stuff. Anybody that charges by the linear foot or by the cubic foot, I would be aware of those, because then you're gambling on how good they are at loading their truck, which doesn't make it, you shouldn't be charged more if they can't load a truck very well, and it takes up more volume in the trailer. Those are some of the other ones that when we get calls for, hey, help me get my stuff, they won't give me my stuff. Well, they told me it was going to take up 2,300 cubic feet, and it took up 3,200 cubic feet, and now I can't, they're charging me more. I mean, there's some that'll charge you by the roll of tape. They'll charge you by the number of pads you use. I mean, it gets kind of crazy. You want somebody that's going to have a bound estimate for packing, for transportation, and for valuation, which we can get into that too, is exactly what the difference is in valuation and insurance. But anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned there about the cubic feet space. I would tell you, we've had historically our move, we take up a giant semi truck, and it drives my husband crazy, thinking like we have so much stuff. We have a home library and we have a home gym. So like we've got some weirdly shaped things. Our most recent move, we had about the same weight of what we moved to Texas with. When we moved to Texas, we took up the whole truck. When we left Texas with about the same weight, we did not take up the whole truck. That they had packed in such a way that they were still able to go get like a small little 4,000-pound shipment after us to put on the truck as well, which was like shocking and crazy to me that, we didn't take up the whole truck. I'm like, what wizardry is this that you are showing me? So definitely knowing how to pack a truck definitely can make a big difference if that's how they're doing their estimate and contract on things. And then we got Chris asking in the comments, he apparently has tuned in late. Thank you, Chris. Mention of security deposits.
Yeah, like we mentioned before, a lot of our contracts, we're going to be
around. Just froze on my end.
Oh, did you freeze?
I did for a second.
Oh, we spazzed there
It'll
for a
freeze and
second.
it'll come back. Internet is weird today.
Robot.
We've got a storm happening here in Kansas, so it's raining and we love technology and we hate it too.
Isn't that the theme? Yeah, security deposits, I think, kind of just mirroring back what we mentioned before. It is customary up until right before 48 hours before the move date for your card to be processed, or if it's a cashier's check environment. But if you have an agency that you're hiring, whether it's through a van line or an independent, or even Georgia's great example that she gave that's using vetted partners, if they're asking for an amount of money too far in advance, that's a red flag. These should be established organizations that have a day page that has the capacity to get you on their schedule, to dedicate their crews for you and get you prepared. They should not be accepting these amounts of money prior to that window. I'm going to suggest no, don't pay that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Georgia's comment here, talking about how there are some excellent companies that provide PPM service that do not own warehouses. One of the examples is Logs and Mill Moves. If you're in my PCS group, you know we talk about Logs and Mill Moves frequently, and a lot. That Isabel, who runs that show, she's a military spouse. She's an Army veteran. She's absolutely phenomenal. If you go and you call her and you talk to her, she will give you the warm and fuzzies. She'll lay out exactly how things work. She partners with other smaller agents and van lines to get your stuff moved. She hires and vets the crews. If you go onto their website, you can see that she uses Yembo, where you can do like a virtual survey to see how much stuff you have and get an estimate, so you know beforehand exactly what your move may or may not cost for you. But if you go through and you ask all the questions, look at all the information that we've been talking about today, you'd be able to easily see a company like that is a legit, reputable company. You talked on it a little bit. So let's just go to what you were mentioning before, Lakelan, about valuation and insurance. What do families really need to know in regards to this when it comes to PPM? We know that when we do a military contract and move, the TSP is liable for $6 per pound up to $75,000. And then if we have a catastrophic loss or anything above that, we have to go to our private insurance then and file the rest of it with our private policy. How does that work when doing a PPM, and what companies provide for that?
All right, so there's a difference between valuation and insurance. So insurance is basically not a no fault coverage. So it's like your homeowner's insurance. Lightning strikes your house, or a pipe bursts and floods your floor, things like that. It's a no fault coverage. The moving industry has what we call valuation. So what that means is it's an at fault coverage. So that means if we did something that caused the damage, broke a leg on a dining room table or dented a refrigerator, then the valuation is the level of coverage you have to file a claim and fix whatever that damage is. So, and in the PPM world outside of the DoD, you basically they'll have a minimum coverage for full value. It's the same thing. It's FRV, right? So it's full value replacement. I think that's FVR, full replacement value, FRV. So I've only had one cup of coffee this morning. So that kind of coverage is they'll have a minimum on it. So in other words, you can't go, I want FRV for my 10,000 pound shipment, but I only want to pay for $8,000 worth of FRV. Brittany might know more what that minimum is. I don't remember if it's $6 or $8 in the commercial word now. Six. Okay. So it's minimum $6 a pound. So the minimum would be $60,000 on a 10,000 pound shipment, but you can really get it pretty much as high as you want. Mm-hmm. But that number the top number really only matters on a catastrophic loss. So if you have, let's just say you go, okay, I'm valuing my stuff, I want $150,000 worth of coverage because, like I said, if for some reason a tornado takes the truck out and everything is a total loss, what is that maximum coverage? Well, if you do the minimum, then that's $60,000. But if you know, like on your homeowner's policy, your homeowner's has a value for your goods. So what is that value the homeowner's does? Some of those are basically just random numbers, like they go based on the size of your house and blah, blah, blah. This is what it should be. And so a lot of people don't know that they have that coverage or even what that amount is because the insurance broker just put a number in there. Some people know exactly what it is because they set the number. And so is that $225,000 to replace everything in your house? I don't know. But that you need to pay attention to that when you're getting your valuation under full value on a PPM move. You can also do, which I don't recommend this, and I know it costs more money to get full value, but the base coverage doesn't cost anything. It's 60 cents per pound, and it is exactly that. So if your dresser in your bedroom weighs 200 pounds, then you get $120 regardless of what happens to that dresser. That's just how it works. So it's free for a reason, because it doesn't really cover much. Now, like I said, it can save you money if you don't have a lot of stuff. You're not that worried about it. You don't want to spend, I don't know what it is, $600, $500, whatever it is, for a small shipment with that coverage. Then don't get it. But I encourage everybody to get it. It protects you. It's not going to make a difference on the, in my opinion, it won't make a difference on the service you get. In other words, people aren't going, well, we're going to send a different crew, or the driver's not going to care as much if it's not full value. They don't, that has no bearing on, at least for reputable movers, it has no bearing on the type of service that you get, whether you have full value or not. So that's the difference, in my opinion. That's the difference in valuation and insurance.
And I'll just piggyback, Lakelan did a great job of explaining the two, but, when the conversation comes up of choosing to do a PPM move or not, if they're even wanting to do a partial, I would recommend, the season's coming up, people are getting ready to move, call your car insurance provider as well if you're going to do a partial yourself, and make sure you understand that coverage environment. Will your car insurance extend the coverage if you are transporting those belongings? What is the personal belongings value that's going to be included with that car insurance? Because at times it's minimal, if anything. And so making sure you understand, if I am transitioning and I'm changing residence, cross state lines, what is my coverage if I have various items in the car? And then, like Lakelan said too, trusted movers, the difference in coverage for us is that unfortunate disaster on the highway that happens, and to make sure that you are covered, less so on the quality of packing that's being done, but we see it every day, these terrible highway accidents that are happening, or a tire hits something in the road from all the construction getting on across the country here, and it blows the tire, and this terrible emergency happens. And so it's really that peace of mind. We talk about that from a standpoint of the emotional side to moving, and just having that structure at night of, my stuff is safe, it's insured, it was a couple $100 more than I wanted to spend, but I can sleep okay for the next 4 days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming up next month, we're going to have an insurance agent on. We're going to break down the different types of insurance for your personal property, your renter's property, vehicle insurance, because newsflash that I didn't know until recently is that if you are shipping a car over the ocean to another country, you need to have maritime insurance added on for the transit time. So that way, if your car falls in the ocean in one of those containers, that sometimes happens, you can get a new car. Without it, you're only getting the value of what it's appraised at. So a lot of things there with insurance we're going to cover next month, and we'll be sure to drop the link to that into the comments of this for easy reference to understand all of that. But it's very important if you're planning a PPM, even PCS in general, a move. Lakelan, newsflash for you, since you're planning a move, to check your insurance policies and what they cover, to ensure that should something happen, you're going to be taken care of, and you're going to be able to replace what you need to replace to reestablish your home. So very important to be able to understand what's covered versus what isn't. So with claims, how can a family, if they find themselves running into a difficult claims aspect with their move or into one of those criminal companies, how can a family really try to help protect themselves during a PPM in this type of situation?
Yep. You want to go first, Lake? You want me to?
Well, I can. So first, it goes, like we've been talking about, it goes with the selection process. That's really where this whole thing starts, is finding the right trusted mover to begin with. Second thing is, like everything else, document, and then after that, document it again. So make sure that you read the entire order for service that you have with that company, front end. If there's a back too, read every line of it to make sure you understand all the terms and conditions that are involved in it, because that's your contract with the moving company. Make sure that the inventory that they do is to the military standard, because that is, you know, you don't just draw lines down the page and every box is the exact same thing, you know, that kind of stuff. Make sure that the inventory is accurate and that you've had a chance to review it prior to, you know, as they're loading, which, you know, some of it is as they're loading. Some, you know, I always encourage, when I was training drivers, I always said, as soon as you get on the inventory page, hand it to the customer so they can read over it while you're going to the next page, because that way the customer's reviewing it as they go along. So that way, if something doesn't make sense or you don't understand what this is, the item is still in the house. It's not 3 tiers deep in the trailer, and now they can't go show you what that gouge was that they put on the inventory. So make sure the inventory is correct and you understand it. Same thing on the other side. Make sure when those items are getting delivered into your house, that either you or somebody you trust is able to have that inventory to check the items off as they come off the truck and make sure they're there, and make sure that what the condition is when they come off. So the earlier you discover any loss or damage and the earlier you notify them, the better you are. So document that. Take pictures if you need to. Take pictures of your house, you know, before they come in and move out. Take pictures of your house before you move in. So that way there's documentation of, hey, this gouge on the hardwood floor wasn't there, you know, before y'all came in here. Well, how do you know that? Well, I took this picture, you know, I took this video while you pulled up in the moving truck, and here's the video of the house. So the more you can document, the better. But it really does come down to picking that right company, because if you pick the right company and you make sure you follow the inventory procedures, the claim process should not be difficult. It really shouldn't. It should not be a fight. It shouldn't be, you know, he said, she said, and that kind of stuff. It really should be. And for the most part, it is. I mean, people hear about these horror stories, but in the reality, and in my experience working with multiple different companies on different claims, whether it's commercial, DOD, or whatever, I have not run across very many companies that just go, we just want to deny the claim no matter what, and we're not paying you anything. Most companies really do want to be fair and reasonable in the claims process, because they want to make you happy as a customer. They want to have you come back to them for your next move. And there's a lot of times where people have claims, and it turns out that they still get all 12s on their survey, and they still have the customers calling going, yeah, I still want them to move me next time. Well, yeah, but you had a $3,800 claim on your last move. Yeah, but they took care of me. They did. They recognized it. They paid it fast. Their inconvenience claim, they took care of that. These are the types of things that a claim doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but just document absolutely everything from beginning to end. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. You know, Lakelan said some really great points, especially about the inventory pages. I would challenge your mover that you're going to hire in the beginning when you're building that relationship. Ask the question, what type of inventories do they utilize? Have they invested in electronic inventory software yet that will also allow photos to be added to the inventory pages? That will make your claim process on the back end so much more ease as well. It'll be there too. Yes, you've documented it before they've arrived, but having it in that platform, legible handwriting, legible descriptions, and that photo there, that's so key. One of the other things I was scribbling as Lakelan was going off too is, I think it's important too to ask, you think I'm kidding, I have it, is ask, I'm a butterfly, otherwise I'll forget, is ask the claim process in the beginning is, if I hire you, how will the claims go? If you're a van line provider or an agent for one of these large van lines, will the claim go through their corporate office, or does your office handle claims internally, or which ones may fall into different buckets? Or maybe you hire a third-party claims company that's out there and all they do is specialize in your claims, and the agency will hand you off to them. I think understanding that expectation before you hire them too will kind of help a little bit with those question marks of what to expect. You'll understand, how many days do I have to file? What's the paperwork look like? Who am I going to talk to? Is there a claims manager? Is there a claims team? And just kind of knowing that before you go in. A good mover will provide you that in the beginning. Is these are going to be your contacts. Here is your coordinator through the process. Here is the individual who helped do the survey. Here's the claims manager. I mean, they're going to be willing to share that with you. And then the last little thing that I wrote down was, I also think we kind of lose that pre-move huddle. And I'm such a fan of like that safety briefing, that pre-move kickstart. And I think that needs to kind of come back. And, taking a minute before the move starts, the customer, whether it's the service member or the spouse, the lead or the driver, depending on if it's a pack day or a load day, and just says, okay, let's take the next couple minutes and we're just going to walk the property together. I'm going to point things out, you point things out, but we're just going to get on the same page and just kind of take a breath and start the job together.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. So we do that in our house, Brittany, when our crews come in, is that, talking about, what needs to go, asking all the questions about stuff. I talk a lot about having the game plan about how you want things to go and working together as a team with your crews, because that can make a difference and can help set the tone for expectations too of how things should go. And part of our game plan is always saying, hey, can you please pack my kids' rooms first so they can stop adding stuff to the car pile? Can you please pack my kitchen last because I'd like to cook dinner tonight before we have to eat out for the next 2 weeks, kind of deal. But no, that pregame huddle can definitely go a long ways. Even doing a PPM, you still have people coming into your home to pack your stuff and to load your stuff. It can go a long ways to making a difference. And then what you said, Lakelan, about having the claims piece of it, where the person had, a big claim, but they were taken care of, that a person's experience can be so subjective based off of what they think is a good move or a not good move. And so it's always important to go find folks that maybe utilize that company, ask around in the different spouse groups for feedback and experiences. Because again, it could have been a horrible move, but communication happened every step of the way. They took care of the claims. They made sure that the family was taken care of and that they didn't have issues and that they didn't go without, and stepped in and filled the gap when something happened, versus we didn't have to file a claim, but it was like pulling teeth to get communication as to when stuff was going to happen. And we couldn't get a hold of people. And then our driver showed up a day later when we weren't expecting them, because we couldn't get a hold of anybody to tell us anything. So an experience can be so subjective. So being able to talk with others that maybe utilize that company and to hear their feedback of how things went and what their experience was like can go a long ways into helping to set expectations for your experience and your move. We go into all of that. So if we have a family that finds themselves, it's too late, they're down the road, they're trying to do their delivery, they discover they have that criminal company that's saying, hey, as we said in the beginning, your stuff was 10,000 pounds and we estimated 5,000. You need to pay us an extra 20,000 before we can deliver your stuff. A family finds them in this situation. Is there anything that they can or should do to kind of help navigate through this without having to pay a big chunk of money? Or are there other resources out there that they can turn to for assistance?
Go ahead, Lake. You can go first. This one makes me so sad.
Yeah, this is something that I hate when I end up with these phone calls, especially when it's a military service member, because that really, to Brittany's point, that really breaks our heart that there's people that actually do this. There was an entity that United and Mayflower had that was a repository for people to go to when they were in this situation, and they would offer, legal assistance and contact the right people and that kind of stuff. And now it's something that ATA MSC, the Moving and Storage Conference, is looking at incorporating into things that they offer. So you can contact the associations, the International Association of Movers, ATA MSC. You can also contact your state moving and storage associations, because they can help with that as well. Definitely, and this goes back to the beginning, make sure you know where that company is headquartered that you're working with, because that many times becomes the state that you have to file a complaint in. So if they're in Florida, but you're moving from Minnesota to Texas, Florida is where you got to go in order to file a complaint and do that kind of stuff. I know you can do it with the Secretary of State. You can file a complaint with the Secretary of State's office. Better Business Bureau, that's a very small tool, in my opinion. That's a very small tool in your toolbox, because most of the time, Better Business Bureau, if you file a complaint with them, they send it to the mover. If the mover responds to the complaint to the Better Business Bureau, then you get an A+ rating. It's not that you actually resolve the complaint; they just responded to the complaint. So it's not foolproof, because there's a lot of people out there that I'm A+ rated on the Better Business Bureau. That doesn't mean, it means absolutely nothing sometimes. So that's kind of where, and it is difficult because there's so many different things that come into play. It's an interstate shipment, so now literally there's like FBI that can get involved in that. So there's a lot of different agencies that get into that. FMCSA, DOT, those are other places. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, they license interstate transportation. So that's a place you can go to. And they actually will. A lot of those people at FMCSA, they will jump on that. They'll go, wait a minute, what now? And they will go right to that company, and they will. It becomes an audit issue. It becomes a whole big deal when you tell FMCSA that a military service member is being bent over the barrel, not legally. So there's avenues there too.
The one other thing that I'll add to this too, I mean, we've kind of mirrored this topic before, is document everything. So if you find yourself in a position that the driver is on site demanding more money, or you're getting this ghost call from their headquarters office trying to process a credit card payment, my recommendation is you get everything in writing. Send me an email that says why I have to pay more, how much is it, form of payment. I hate to have to tell a service member to let the driver leave, because it's such a terrifying point, but to be able to go after this company and get the ramifications that are needed, and to make sure that the service member is taken care of. Don't feel like you have to be twisted an arm and pay $15,000 in that moment. The emotions are high, and that's what they're hoping for, that your emotions are going to allow you to whip out your credit card and make another payment. If they'll give it to you, find out where the driver's going. Where is it going to be taken? Again, put it in writing. Even if it stays on the truck, just where is he parking for the night? Is he parking at a truck stop until we talk about this overnight? Is he going to a moving company or a self-storage? Where is he going? And they should have to tell you that information. We could spin a little here, but it may not be a bad idea to put a tracker in your shipment. If you're hiring a company, put a tracker in it. Figure out where they're going. Make sure you keep your eyes on it the whole time. A reputable company would encourage it. Sure, you can put one an AirPod or whatever the eye things, put it in there. AirDrop things. We're not going to discourage that. But again, if you're not sure and you just want to be safe, put them in a couple different boxes, and at least that way, if you find yourself in a sad situation to have to let the truck go away for the night to finish this conversation, you can see where he's parked or she's parked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of good tips there, especially about the trackers. Always a big controversial thing with our industry partners, but glad to hear about that. But I mean, yeah, a lot of good information there. Is the tracking piece of it. And, as you said, being able to know where they're going, what they're doing. We hear a lot about these type of situations. Usually it comes from in our military community, from when they're trying to have the military move them, but then the military isn't able to book an agent, TSP, with the dates that they need, the time frame, depending on where it is they're going to, when they need to report by someplace. And then our families are just getting on Google and trying to find, whatever company says they have capacity and can do it for the cheapest amount. So that way we can be able to get out of our house and get to our next location, and they don't take the time to go through all the steps to verify that they're a reputable company, asking all those important questions to make sure that they know exactly what it is they're getting into and with who. So I think, if you guys are watching, we're going to get the links for all of the big associations and some of the other resources that they mentioned. We're going to get those dropped into the links into the comments, the FMCSA, all of that. So that way you guys can easily go take a look at them, reference them. I'm just going to call Lakelan for every issue that I hear, since he enjoys phone calls. We talked a lot about a lot of good information today in regards to PPMs of what our families need to know when preparing to do a PPM. Is there any last final closing thoughts? Anything else that you want to make sure we mention that we haven't already discussed? We'll start with you, Lakelan.
Yeah, there's two things. I actually made a note of a couple things. So one is I will do a brief unpaid testimonial for logs and mill moves. So I've known Isabel and the ladies over there for pretty much ever since they got started, and they actually hire mill spouses to do pack jobs. And I know that they've done, as of last year, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 pack jobs out of the Fort Bragg market, 0 pack damage claims, not one. That's not even, I don't even know how that's possible. But out of those 60 moves, there was not one single pack damage claim. So it very well trained, very well organized. She gets the whole process. And so I can't say enough good things about them because they're really, really good. The other thing is when you can really go a long way to help set the stage for your own move. So after you hire that reputable mover, done the research and all that, I found years ago, part of this because I used to work at a car wash way back when I was in high school. So whenever you go to a car wash and it pulls out front and they start wiping your car down, I walk out there before they start wiping the car down and I tip them before they even get started, because 99% chance I'm going to get a really great level of service versus hoping they did good and then tipping them at the end. I'm not saying you have to tip movers. Tipping movers is great. But when they get there, don't cut the air conditioner off to the house when you're in Arizona and it's 9 million degrees. Keep the air conditioner on, have Gatorades and waters and just simple things like that. Even donuts or just things like that. So the movers feel welcome when they come in the house. I think that's just, I don't know, maybe it's a Southern hospitality thing, but it's not just Southern, it's everywhere, right? You just be good hosts to movers that are coming into your house at the beginning. I think that sets the stage for them to feel comfortable with you and you to feel comfortable with them. So I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of Lakelan. I can't express enough how important it is to have a relationship. Just the takeaway piece is understand there is a lot of really, really great movers out here, independent or like you said, the logs, the mill, they're phenomenal as well. I just feel confident. We want to service your moves. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to have a great experience. We don't want you to feel like leaving a DP3 environment and doing on your own is any kind of a sacrifice. If anything, we want to be that partner to add to the equation. Even if you just need to ask questions, call one of us. There is a network of us who would take a phone call. Lake will take 9 out of 10 of them for you. And just ask. I think we would rather ensure that after your move is done, you can look back and say, I am just so glad that I paused for a few moments and I found some partners who helped me kind of navigate this. You dwindle it down to 2 or 3, people, and just ask. And I think that partnership level is just going to find a lot more success at the end of this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that whole trying to, get the feedback and know about your reputable companies. If you're in my group, if you're going down this rabbit hole of doing a PPM and you're not sure if who you're looking at seems like a reputable company or not, ask in the group. Many of us are always happy. We are our online FBI team and happy to go down the rabbit hole of seeing, sleuthing what we can to determine whether they seem a reputable company with the good, warm, and fuzzies, or if there's someone that should potentially stay away from. So please don't hesitate to ask. Wrapping up, we got Carolyn in the comments going back, talking about the trackers. It's the Apple AirTags that a lot of people use. If you are on the dark side and you have an Android phone, a lot of people use the smart tags or a tile. That some of those work a little bit better than others, but Carolyn, she owns Nice Move City. We've had her on the show before talking about her technology that she has. So we'll drop the link to that show in the comments as well. But she uses a secure GPS tracker for her shipments, and you can be able to track on an app. And she's actually partnered with Loxa Mill Moves. So you've heard a lot about Loxa today. So if you have a move with them, you're automatically going to get one of those GPS trackers in your shipment where you can track where your shipment is going and what's happening along the way. We talked about a lot of good stuff today. Lakelan, Brittany, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to come share all this information with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah.
And everybody else watching, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you've taken some notes. You'll come back, you'll watch this, be prepared for your next PPM. Join us next week, same time, same place. We're going to be talking with Vernice from the Military Spouse Advocacy Network and about a PCS course that I created for them that's launched on their app to kind of help walk you through that process, and also what MSAN is and how they kind of help build community for our military spouses as well. Everybody else, you're preparing for a PCS, going through one right now. You got questions, comments, issues, concerns, anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always more than happy to help in any capacity that we possibly can. And until next week, same time, same place, remember, take care of each other.